The room shook without moving as the live stream counter plunged, and I tasted copper panic while the chat erupted with jeers. Alex said, "We built trust for years, and it vanished in 60 seconds. The app froze on the big screen, and a red error bar sliced across the hope we printed on banners." Maya said, "Breathe. We can patch, but not here." The board texted in clipped bullets, and my phone felt heavier than guilt. A pundit laughed on TV, and Victoria smirked like a verdict. Tom said, "Son, step back before you drown." I stared at the wreckage of a dream shaped like a booth and a promise. Ethan was suddenly silent, and silence roared louder than scandal. A rumor blamed our code, then blamed our ethics, then blamed me. Alex said, "If I run now, I stay small forever." Maya said, "Then stand, but stand smarter." I wiped the screen, found a whiteboard, and drew a line that refused to break. Dawn scraped pale light across a cluttered apartment, and the city whirred like a tired engine. Alex said, "Noise can't tell me who I am." The eviction notice curled on the table, and the coffee tasted like rust and resolve. A voicemail from Maya promised a plan, and I rewound her words twice to keep the ground still. Tom said, "Stability matters more than pride," and I let the sentence hover without landing. I opened the pitch deck and stared into an empty slide as if it could blink first. Alex said, "We'll rebuild the trust before we rebuild the code." The mirror showed a face I knew but did not like, so I looked past it to the window. A bus sighed below, and the traffic's breath sensed with mine. The shame felt heavy, but the vision still hummed. On a borrowed whiteboard, the future took shape as boxes, arrows, and a bet on underserved customers. Alex said, "We remove friction where others add fees." Maya said, "Then show the life it gives, not the tech it hides." Priya listened without interrupting, and her notes formed a quiet lattice of order. We mapped a pilot, and the numbers leaned from improbable to possible. A headline blinked on my screen, and I closed it like a door. Alex said, "Story first, spec second," and my pen moved faster than doubt. The room warmed with momentum that felt earned. Maya said, "Own the why before the how," and the sentence clicked. We stepped back, and the board looked less like ink and more like direction. The diner smelled like burnt sugar and old hopes, and a neon sign buzzed like a warning. Tom said, "I have seen bright ideas eat brighter people." I stirred coffee that did not need stirring, and watched the spoon circle a small storm. Alex said, "Fear can advise me, but it can't drive." Tom sighed, and years settled into his shoulders like coats on a rack. He asked about insurance, and I answered about impact. We both smiled at how little those words shook hands. Tom said, "If you must do this, make it clean," and the moral landed without a bruise. Outside, a delivery truck hissed, and the morning pressed on. I paid the check, and kept the receipt like a promise. Back at the co-working space, the air held the thrum of shared ambition and recycled dreams. Maya said, "We frame the failure as context, not destiny." I nodded, and the deck grew a backbone. We carved a customer story that walked, breathed, and paid. Alex said, "We will show proof in weeks, not wishes." The budget looked thin, so we sharpened it into a blade rather than a blanket. Priya slid a schedule forward that saved hours we did not have. Maya said, "Courage is clarity spoken out loud," and I felt taller by an inch. The evening lights clicked on one by one like small approvals. I pressed save and felt steadier than the chair beneath me. The office lights flickered like they doubted our chances, and the whiteboard glared back at me with unfinished arrows. Alex said, "This idea lives where others don't bother looking." The words echoed, but the silence afterward felt louder than conviction. Maya leaned forward, her pen scratching furiously across her notebook, her eyes lit with cautious hope. She said, "The plan only matters if people believe it can survive outside this room." I tapped the table and the hum of laptops joined in like an orchestra that didn't know the tune. Priya whispered, "Then we need evidence, not just theory," and her spreadsheets filled the air with sober truth. My chest tightened as the weight of their faith settled heavy but steady. Alex said, "We'll shape this into more than a gamble, even if the math says otherwise." I stood and drew a thick circle around the future I refused to erase. The meeting room reeked of power and polished marble, and the rival's voice slid through the air like oil. Victoria said, "Innovation is cute, but markets reward scale, not dreams." My stomach turned, yet I clenched my jaw to stop it from showing. She crossed her arms, her smile cut like glass, and her investors nodded as if her words were commandments. Alex said, "Markets forget quickly, but they never ignore vision," and I placed the sentence carefully like a seed in stone. Her laugh echoed, sharp enough to slice through confidence. Victoria said, "We'll see if your faith buys bread," and her heels clicked like gavel strikes as she left. I stood still, heat rising in my chest, but I promised myself I would not let her mockery be the last word. I pitched until my throat burned, and each rejection letter landed like a stone in my pocket. Alex said, "We'll rewrite, reframe, try again," though the mirror whispered back that persistence looked like desperation. Maya carried coffee to my desk and left sticky notes with small victories scribbled in bright ink. Priya tallied feedback with ruthless efficiency, circling flaws like a surgeon tracing scars. One email opened with polite praise and ended with a door slammed shut. Alex said, "They can doubt the product, but not the grit," and I felt the words prop me upright. The night stretched thin, but we kept breathing ideas into slides that fought to be born. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and ambition, and the mentor leaned back with eyes that had seen both triumph and ruin. Daniel said, "Your idea is fine, but fine doesn't survive storms." His tone cut clean, but it carried weight I couldn't ignore. Alex said, "So we sharpen it until fine becomes fire." And I scribbled notes even as my pulse trembled. Daniel tapped the table, his ring leaving a faint echo, then leaned forward with sudden warmth. He said, "The market isn't against you, it's indifferent. Force it to notice." The sentence hit like a spark in dry wood, and Maya's head snapped up in recognition. For the first time in weeks, I saw a path not of survival, but of battle worth fighting. The office felt smaller as whispers curled between walls, and Ethan's smile carried shadows I chose not to name. Ethan said, "We need faster results, or we're finished," his words slick with urgency that felt heavier than help. I studied his eyes, searching for loyalty, but saw only impatience. Maya shifted uneasily, her hands folding as if she wanted to shield the plan from sharp edges. Priya bit her lip and slid her gaze back to the numbers that refused to bend. Alex said, "We move with precision, not panic," but the tremor in my chest betrayed me. Ethan nodded, yet the curve of his mouth said more than his words dared. The air chilled, and doubt seeped deeper than the draft. The bills stacked high enough to block the window, and each envelope carried the weight of endings. Alex said, "Bankruptcy is a word, not my future," though my chest rattled with doubt. Maya rubbed her temple, whispering numbers like prayers, while Priya slid spreadsheets across the desk with the calm precision of a surgeon. Ethan leaned back, watching with a smirk that twisted more than his words. Tom called and said, "No vision is worth drowning in debt," and I nearly believed him. The silence stretched as heavy as the ink on overdue notices. Alex said, "We'll cut deeper, sacrifice more, but not stop," and the room held its breath. The heater clicked, the lights flickered, and determination pressed harder than fear. The rivals' press release lit screens everywhere, and their product launch looked like thunder rolling toward us. Victoria said, "This is the future, and there's no room for amateur." Her face flashed across every billboard, and her voice echoed in every podcast. I clenched my fists until nails bit skin, but rage couldn't buy time. Alex said, "Competition sharpens, not berries," yet my throat burned with fear. Maya typed fast, sending messages to partners who still believed. Priya circled data that screamed losses in bold red. Ethan whispered, "Maybe we should fold," and his words spread like poison. The city lights blinked back through the glass, reminding me that giants cast long shadows, but they don't own the sky. The bank account bled numbers, and the sound of coins in a jar felt like thunder in the silence. Maya slid her savings across the table and said, "If it keeps us afloat, take it." My throat closed, because sacrifice looked heavier on her shoulders than mine. Priya offered extra hours, her eyes burning with quiet fire. Tom warned me that loyalty could turn into loss, but I swallowed the guilt and nodded. Alex said, "This will not be wasted," and I felt the words scarred deeper than any rejection. The office air turned sharp with resolve and desperation bound together. Their faith became my chain, and I promised to break it only by pulling forward. In the corner, where keyboards clattered unnoticed, Priya's hands danced across code that no one had asked her to fix. She whispered, "Maybe this makes us faster," and the screen glowed with her silent defiance. Alex said every piece matters, but I had not realized how much until I saw the spark she carried in quiet lines. Maya leaned in, eyes wide as graphs shifted upward, even if only slightly. Ethan walked past without noticing, but the change hummed like a secret. Alex said unseen effort is still power, and my chest swelled with gratitude. The hum of machines grew louder, not from volume but from meaning, and for the first time that week, hope stretched beyond survival. At dinner, the skeptic's voice cracked the calm like a hammer. Sarah said, "You've lost enough time and money, stop before it takes everything." She was my sister, and her eyes carried fear heavier than anger. Alex said, "I'd rather fail chasing truth than succeed living small," and the words strained against blood ties. The table shook with the weight of her silence, and Tom's voice echoed in my memory, urging balance. Maya reached under the table, her hand steady against mine. Sarah said, "You think courage feeds you? It doesn't." My jaw tightened, but my heart roared louder than reason. I left the table without dessert, but with a fire too wild to extinguish. The night pressed in like a weight, and the office sat in silence except for the hum of machines. My chest felt hollow, and every failure replayed until the edges blurred. Alex said, "Maybe they were right. Maybe I am chasing smoke." Maya sat quietly, her eyes red from holding back more than words. Priya stared at the screen, lips pressed thin, and I wondered if loyalty could survive defeat. Ethan leaned by the door, arms crossed, silent but satisfied, his smirk hidden in shadow. Tom's voice echoed from memory, "No dream is worth ashes." My fists closed and I felt tears threaten but refused to fall. Alex said, "If this is my lowest, then I stand here before I rise." The sentence cut the silence, and hope flickered faintly against despair. The cafe was nearly empty, its silence broken only by the hiss of steam. I sat with my head down, wondering if it was all too late. Then a voice, calm but firm, asked, "Why are you still here if you don't believe in it?" I looked up and saw the investor's eyes fixed on me, sharp and curious. Daniel had told me, opportunities rarely knock twice, and this moment felt like a test. Alex said, "Because the world hasn't seen what I see, and I refuse to let that truth die." The investor leaned back, a faint smile tugging at lips, then nodded once. Maya whispered, "This could be the turn," and my chest lifted for the first time in weeks. The air shifted, heavy with the possibility of change. The mentor's voice still echoed when he met me outside, his expression both stern and supportive. Daniel said, "Investors don't rescue you. They challenge you. Don't mistake money for salvation." I nodded, though doubt still pulsed like an open wound. Alex said, "Then I'll prove to her that my vision is worth more than numbers." Daniel clapped my shoulder, his eyes softer now, filled with a wisdom earned by scars. He said, "Lead with conviction, but anchor it in reality, or you'll drown in promises." His words pressed into me like weights, heavy but steady. The street smelled of rain and neon lights blinked like restless warnings. I knew the choice ahead was not just about survival, but about identity itself. The negotiation table gleamed under harsh lights, and silence stretched before the first word. Olivia said, Convince me your vision outlasts setbacks or I walk. My throat tightened, but I steadied myself. Alex said, I don't promise perfection, but I promise resilience, and resilience builds futures. Maya slid the deck forward, her hand trembling, but her face calm. Priya adjusted numbers on the screen, highlighting progress, despite losses. Ethan leaned back with arms crossed, his doubt visible but unspoken. Olivia's eyes scanned every page, every word, weighing truth against fear. The seconds dragged, each tick a judgment. Then she said, I see something here worth risking on. And the air finally moved again. The contract lay between us, black ink against white paper, heavy with unspoken stakes. Olivia said, this doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees a chance. My hand hovered over the pen, trembling more than I wanted to admit. Maya said, this is the lifeline we fought for, and her voice carried the weight of every sacrifice. Priya's eyes glistened, her quiet resolve louder than any cheer. Ethan smirked, but even his silence couldn't sour the moment. Alex said, this signature's not the end, it's the beginning, and I pressed pen to paper. The scratch of ink sounded louder than thunder, and when I looked up, the investor's nod felt like sunlight breaking storm clouds. For the first time, hope didn't just flicker, it burned. The office buzzed with a rhythm we hadn't heard in months, partners calling, new faces walking in, and charts bending upward. Maya said, this is the oxygen we needed. Priya leaned over the laptop, her eyes wide as numbers rose. Even Ethan smiled, though his eyes held shadows that didn't match his grin. Alex said momentum doesn't erase scars, but it makes them worth carrying. The sound of printers and keyboards turned into a chorus of rebirth. Olivia visited, arms crossed but her nod betraying satisfaction. She said, don't confuse early traction with victory, and her words grounded us. Still, for the first time, hope didn't feel fragile. It felt alive, growing roots in the cracks left by failure. The Rivals ad campaign blared across screens, their message dripping with arrogance. Victoria said, we lead, others follow, her voice wrapping the market like a chain. My chest burned as our inbox filled with doubts from clients wavering. Alex said, their noise won't outlast our proof, though the tremor in my hands betrayed me. Maya clenched her jaw, fighting anger, while Priya recalculated metrics with urgency. Ethan muttered, she's winning, and the words cut deeper than the campaign itself. Olivia said, ignore the theater. Focus on building what can't be undone. Her calm steadied me as storm winds howled louder. The screen glowed with her image, but I swore her shadow would not define us. Trust fractured when Ethan stayed late, only to forward sensitive drafts to an unknown address. Maya said, why would he, her voice breaking like glass. I froze, staring at the email trail that betrayed us. Alex said, we gave him everything, and he sold shadows for gold. Priya's hands shook as she whispered, I should have seen it, though the blame was never hers. Olivia stood with fury masked in composure, saying, this will not sink us, unless you let it. My breath came sharp, betrayal stinging sharper than failure ever had. The air grew heavy with the knowledge that betrayal doesn't come from enemies, but from within the circle you trusted most. The moral compass entered like a voice of judgment, not anger but clarity. David said, you can't build on rot, you must decide what integrity means before you chase the next dollar. My heart twisted because I knew he was right. Alex said, if we compromise now we lose more than a company, we lose ourselves. Maya's eyes softened, relief flickering through pain. Priya said, then we choose the harder road, and her voice was steady. Olivia nodded, her approval sharp but approving. David said, ethics cost, but they also save. His words landed like anchors, holding us firm against the storm. I breathed in, knowing the path ahead would cut, but it would not corrode us. The confrontation erupted in the conference room, betrayal laid bare before every partner. Ethan said, I did what was necessary to survive, his tone sharp but hollow. Alex said, you didn't just betray me, you betrayed us all, and the words cut like fire. Maya slammed her fist on the table, shouting, "We trusted you." Priya's voice cracked as she said, "Your greed almost killed everything we bled for." Olivia stood tall, declaring, "This ends here. You will not poison what we are building." Ethan's smirk vanished as the silence turned judgmental. My hands shook, but strength steadied me. Alex said, "Your chapter ends tonight," and the room exhaled a bitter finality. Dawn turned the office windows into pale mirrors, and the city hummed like a test. Olivia said, "Funding is not faith, it is judgment renewed daily." The words landed clean, and my breath clipped at the edge. Maya said, "We have a plan and traction, but we must own the risks." Priya slid a chart forward that rose like a careful tide. Alex said, "I will not ask for patience I have not earned." Olivia watched my face, as if it held a ledger. She said, "If I stay, I need proof for the fire, not the sunshine." Silence folded around the table like cloth. Alex said, "Then watch us in the storm because we are not done." The auditorium smelled of fresh paint and projection heat, and every seat watched us breathe. Victoria said, "Let us demonstrate what leadership looks like." Her voice rang like polished steel. My throat lifted anyway. Alex said, "You will see outcomes, not promises." Maya cued the demo, and the screen bloomed alive. Priya said, "Latency cut, churn bending, pilot conversion up." The graphs climbed with earned grace. Victoria laughed once and said, "Pretty pictures fade." Olivia did not look at her. She looked at me. Alex said, "Pictures fade, but value keeps speaking." Backstage, concrete walls held the echo of applause and doubt. Ethan stepped from shadow with eyes that did not blink. Ethan said, "Walk away from this deal, and I bury your pilot data." My stomach hardened, but the fear passed like a wave. Alex said, "You already tried to burn us, and we kept walking." He smiled thinly and said, "Public pain travels fast." The hallway air thinned, sharp with old dust and threat. Alex said, "Integrity is the only shield I can lift forever." He flinched at the word forever. My voice did not. I took the service stairs to breathe, and rain tapped the window like a clock. Daniel's voice returned, not gentle but true. Daniel said, "Led with conviction, anchor in reality, and never trade soul for speed." I felt the steps steady beneath that cadence. Alex said, "Our edge is trust delivered, not hype performed." The storm rattled the pain, and my pulse matched it, beat for beat. I pictured the customers we promised to unburden. Tom's caution threaded the memory, but did not bind it. Alex said, "We sign on value, and we ship on time." The choice clicked like a latch. On stage again, I let the silence breathe first. Alex said, "We open the core AP to pilot partners, and we lock pricing only on delivered outcomes." A murmur rolled through the room like weather. Maya said, "Security hardened, uptime guaranteed." Priya said, 2 quarters to positive unit economics at current traction. Tangadu. Victoria said, "You are giving away your crown." Olivia waited for fear to show, and it did not. Alex said, "We trade secrecy for speed and trust, and we win by serving first." The room leaned forward. The decision stood taller than me. The dust settled as quietly as it had risen, and the office breathed like a survivor after battle. Alex said, "We did not win everything, but we did not lose ourselves." Maya leaned back in her chair, exhaustion softened by pride. Priya smiled faintly as her graphs finally showed balance instead of collapse. Olivia stood near the window, her reflection sharp against the skyline, and she said, "Now the work truly begins." The silence was no longer heavy, it was full, patient, waiting for the next step. Alex said, "Our scars are proof we endured, and our numbers are proof we can grow." The room, for the first time, felt whole again. The skeptic visited quietly, her arms folded but her eyes softer than before. Sarah said, "I didn't believe in this, but I see what it means to you now." My chest lifted, not from triumph, but from being seen. Alex said, "I didn't need agreement, I needed you to understand why I couldn't quit." She sat, her hand brushing mine briefly, and her silence carried an apology words could not match. Tom's voice echoed faintly, reminding me that family is the mirror you cannot break. Sarah whispered, I may never understand the risk, but I believe in you. That was enough, more than enough. At the team meeting, the silent observer finally stepped forward. Priya said, I may not have spoken often, but I never stopped building. Her words caught me off guard, and the room turned to her with newfound respect. Maya clapped first, her face shining with gratitude. Olivia nodded, acknowledging quiet strength as valuable as any pitch. Alex said, Your work carried us when we didn't even know it, and the truth hung in the air like sunlight. Priya blushed but stood tall, her presence no longer hidden in the background. The applause wasn't thunder, it was steady rain, nourishing and deserved. The investor leaned closer than ever before, her voice softer now. Olivia said, You proved resilience is more valuable than profit alone. My chest tightened as I realized her respect mattered more than her money. Alex said, You believed when no one else did, and I will not forget that. Her smile was brief, almost reluctant, but real. Maya whispered, Respect isn't given, it's earned, and Priya's eyes glistened with quiet agreement. The moment wasn't victory, it was validation. Olivia said, Do not waste this second chance. The room felt both smaller and infinitely larger at once. I stood alone on the rooftop, the city sprawling below like a promise yet unfinished. Alex said, The storm did not break me, it built me. My hands gripped the railing, steady, not trembling. I remembered every voice, Tom's warnings, Sarah's doubts, Daniel's wisdom, Maya's loyalty, Priya's quiet fire, Olivia's faith. Each had carved me into someone new. The skyline pulsed with neon and starlight, and I whispered, This is not the end, only the beginning. The wind carried the words out into the night, and for once, I believed them fully. The story was not about an investor, it was about becoming unbreakable.